going on. Finally got a whole load of deliveries I've been waiting on, which is awesome. Stuff from the UK, the US and that. So it's time to split the crankcase of the CT125. First time splitting a crankcase as well, so kind of figuring it out as I go along, but it seems like it'll be fairly straightforward. Only a small engine as well, so nothing too hectic with it. Basically the original case that came with the bike, there's a little piece that's cracked off right next to an oil galley that pumps oil up to the head of the engine. So I tried some JB weld, didn't work. Could maybe try welding it, but I don't have the aluminium skills. Plus I thought if I could find a new case, it might just be easier just to transfer all the internals across. So still keeping the transmission, still keeping the crank. They seemed all right. I was riding it for a bit. So I got a few new engine bolts, all stainless steel, which is awesome. I think just supposed to be a bit careful with torquing them down because of the stainless into the aluminium casing of the engine. You just don't want to strip the threads. A new cam tensioner, got new oil seals, couple gaskets for the exhaust. That's really good because every time you pull the engine, you need to take the exhaust off, and I keep destroying these gaskets. Your cam chain, couple new main bearings, and full set of gaskets. Started out just using an impact driver just to try and knock those Phillips head bolts loose. Had me super stumped for a while there. Just a bit of reading, bit of Professor YouTube just to figure out what might be going on there. I had a look at one of the threads, looked like it might have a thread locker or something on it. So I just cranked the blowtorch on there for a good while as well, just to try and get those screws loose. Impact driver wasn't working at all, so it was just clutching out, just burning out. I was gutted at this point, super G'd up to get stuck into the bike, but nothing was working for me, so time to put it away for a little while and come back to it later. Just went over the case, ended up drilling each of the heads off the bolts with like a 5.5mm bit. I think they're only M6 bolts as well. So 5.5mm bit, took them off. Needed a bigger drill bit just to sort of knock the heads loose on a couple of them, but that was all right. So I got this cutting oil. I'm gonna bang that on the screws as I go around. Just keep that drill bit a little bit cooler, help it cut through a bit more. And then it was onto the case splitter. First time I ever used that, so sort of figuring out as I went along. Did sort of lift the case a bit uneven. I'm not keeping the old case, or just for the shelf, but not keeping it to put into a bike, so I did get a little screwdriver and just pop it up just to even it up there. My understanding is take these three little arms and line them up with all different case bolts, and then we wind in slowly this part, which will then press on the crank and pop the case away from the crank assembly. Had me stressing for a second there. These bolts here are slightly bigger, just for another engine. Didn't see the thinner ones in the bag there, so we are on. Fuck. There we go, that's it. Time to take all of the internals actually out of the case. I took photos of everything before I took it out. Photos of it all in place, in position, so you can sort of tell when you're putting it back together what goes where, what's happening. Ended up actually using an egg carton. You can fit all of the transmission parts in there quite nicely just to hold them. Make sure they don't all split apart or roll around or anything on the bench. So there we have it, that's the engine. So you got the crank just here, you got the piston firing up and down, moving that. And then on the other side of this case, there's the clutch mechanism. And so then that all connects up into this bit, which is the transmission. So you got all sorts of gears and gearing down in here. The gear selector drum. So this actually moves with the gear selector pedal. Here I can give you a little demo of how that transmission works as you're flicking your foot. So we're going up and it's raising these little forks. As you can see when I turn it to go up another gear, it's lifting and lowering all these gears in and out of each other to change the ratios. Just gonna get a whole lot of photos of all this now, so just for reference for later, and then we will start taking all of this apart. It definitely helps putting things back together straight away as soon as you found them, to try and like chunk up everything. So I put this circlip back on the Kickstarter assembly just now. Yeah. These main crank bearings just seem like they're going to be a lot of work to take off, so they don't feel too bad. So I'm hoping that I can just drop this whole assembly off into the other case. Left hand sides of the crankcase here. My case that came with my bike actually has a sealed bearing up here, and that's really smooth, that one. So I think what I'm going to try and do, all the other bearings seemed alright in this case, they came out pretty easy, all of these ones as well. But this one just has a little bit of grinding in there. This one. So I did look at putting, you can put the cases in the oven and try and get them to expand evenly in the oven rather than with a blowtorch, and try and get those bearings to just drop out. But I think what I'm going to try and do is go to a local shop and see if they'll swap the bearings for me. Just keeps the kitchen clean and you don't have to worry about that too much. I'm going to try and keep all of these a bit oily and greasy for now, not clean them just yet. They can rust, they can sort of wear a bit while they're out of the case, not in the oil. So I'm going to leave them like this, hope that it sort of keeps the rust at bay. And then just before they go into the new case, I will give them a good scrub down, get them with a good load of brake cleaner, get them all shiny, ready to go into the new case. I think that's going to be it for today on the crankcase. I'm just cleaning it up now, getting a bit of oil out. And then I might get stuck into the other crankcase, which I got sitting on the shelf, and just give that a good scrub down just so these are all ready to go in.